Good morning, everyone. My name is Betty Guo, and I first have to make it clear that it's purely coincidence that I also write about Mask of the Red Death. And the title of my paper is The Grotesque Imposed Mask of the Red Death. And first of all, I want to introduce my thesis statement. I will use theory of the grotesque to read the mask of the Red Death and to examine how representations of breaking boundaries in a short story exemplify the conception of the grotesque. And in the first section of my paper, I will explore the definition of the grotesque. And at first, I will review several critics, including Harpan, Kaiser, Bakhtin, and Jennings' conception of the grotesque. And grotesque imagery is the combination of irrelevant and incompatible elements, which challenges viewers' perception and imagination, such as a human head combined with the body of an animal or a plant. It is something strange but also familiar to us. So I conclude that the grotesque is something in between. It is either or, but also neither nor. It is something beyond our imagination and exists in a realm far beyond. So the conception of the grotesque is boundary breaking. It does not confine to certain category. Also, I will explore the relationship between the conception of the grotesque and the conception of horror. I quote from Jennings. There is some argument in favor of designating the horror that manifests itself in strange and bizarre ways as grotesque. Poe usually understood the term in this way. He associated it with the popular vogue of German horrors and even attempted to discount it with regard to his stories, such as Gothic grotesquerie is still the most valid type in the minds of some authorities, and the association with things German has not died out since the last century. So, in the second section of my paper, I will do some literature review, and I will include two critics' important comments on Poe and his relation with the grotesque. Poe's use of the grotesque most obviously shows in the title, Tales of the Grotesque and Arabesque. Kaiser and Lawson also relates Poe's use of the grotesque to the influence of German horror tales written by Hoffmann. The critics' contribution to Poe's relation with the grotesque is significant, but they do not elaborate how the conception of the grotesque can help us to read Poe's short stories. And this is the goal of my paper. I want to rely on this conception of the grotesque to closely read the Mask of the Red Death. So in the third section, textual analysis, I want to analyze different kinds of boundary making and breaking in Mask of the Red Death. And first of all, it is architectural boundary. Actually, it's very similar to David's point of view. As I mentioned before, boundary breaking is a very important conception to understand the conception of the grotesque. So if we want to examine how the grotesque is used in the Mask of the Red Death, we need to look at the boundary breaking themes which repeat in the story. The story narrates a country suffering from this deadly plague, the Red Death. The prince and his subjects hide in an abbey and construct very strong walls to prevent anyone from the outside to enter the abbey. That in the end, the disease, still impersonated by a masked figure, still successfully invade this abbey. So this in the opening of the story, there's a very clear architectural boundary trying to stop the invasion of the disease. But then, in the abbey itself, you will see these very various things of boundary breaking, such as in the abbey, the prince holds a masquerade ball, and there's a description very dreamy between dream and reality. The prince had, I quote from Poe, the prince had directed in great part the movable embellishments of the 7 chambers upon occasion of this great fete, and it was his own guiding taste which had given character to the costumes of the masqueraders. Be sure they were grotesque. They were much glare and glitter and piquancy and fantasism, much of what has been seen in her nanny. So the prince held the masquerade ball in Abbey, wants his guests to dress in a very grotesque way. And the Poe's description of their costumes seems to be between dream and reality, and something that you will not perceive in reality really shows up in reality. And another boundary breaking is the description of the prince's wealth, his mental state, because it is first described as very sanguine and energetic, but then he is later described as have many tendencies toward madness. So the last part is about this very uncertain state between life and death. Because during the masquerade ball, a terrifying figure shows up. This figure dresses up in a dark, blood-splattered robe resembling a funeral shroud. The figure's face resembles a mask that looks much like a rigid face of a corpse and exhibits the trace of the Red Death. And the Red Death impersonates a masquerader invading the abbey and the ball. And the heart of this figure is its death-like state. It is very difficult to distinguish whether this figure is alive or dead. So my conclusion is that by showing its boundary breaking and in-between images and conditions, the mask of the Red Death successfully creates the effect of the grotesque and the horror.
Thank you.